Hello, I'm Dr. Tiffany Tyler Garner, and I have the privilege of serving as the Children Advocacy Alliance's Executive Director. Our mission is to bring our time, talent, and resources to improving conditions for Nevada's children in the areas of education, safety, economic well-being, and health. We are committed to being the independent voice for Nevada's children and families. With each podcast, we will look at ways our community can work together to answer a critical call to action, to provide our children with all the resources they need to make a strong start in life. Today, we'll be resuming our discussion on early investments with CAA Policy Director Annette Dawson-Owens, Assemblywoman Claire Thomas, and Patti Oya, Director of Office of Early Learning and Development at the Nevada Department of Education.
Welcome to the Children's Advocacy Alliance podcast. I'm Annette Dawson-Owens, and I have the pleasure of serving as the School Readiness Policy Director. We are grateful to be joined today by Assemblywoman Claire Thomas and Patti Oya with the Department of Education. When you talk about some of the supports that are necessary, what kind of supports are needed for this field that maybe we could do better on a federal level, locally? What kind of supports could we give families and businesses across Nevada?
Well, when we talk about early childhood system, it is about the family and the child's experience. So we think of Department of Education as just one small piece of the system. And so you're talking about including all those collaborative partners that we work with that look at family health issues and food insecurities. If a child's going to any program hungry, then they're not going to be able to learn, they're not going to be able to focus. And so, we really have to look at the big picture. We work closely with the Welfare Division and the Child Care Subsidy Program, which is part of it. We look at Medicaid and Medicare, whatever the programs are, additional programs in welfare. We work closely with licensing. So I think that we have to think about the system as a bigger piece. It's not just education. It's not just pre-K. But I think that's why we have so many great collaborative partners and partners like Children's Advocacy Alliance. I think when we talk about supporting programs, we're talking about the workforce, definitely. And I know for, federal relief dollars that are in play right now is great. And I know that that's really been helpful first it was in terms of getting the personal protection pieces and the safety pieces so people could come back, but then the workforce wasn't returning. So if the workforce in childcare and pre-K do not come back, then families don't have that as an option, and they themselves cannot go back to work. So then I know that there were a lot of stipends out there to support programs to entice people to come back to the field. And then I know right now the Welfare Division is working on some infrastructure grants, which, again, we need the places for these. If we're going to try to expand, we need seats, we need places. And so I think that's really great. But what happens when all the federal relief dollars leave?
Exactly.
There's going to be a huge cliff that we are already talking about and concerned about. And how are we going to support? Because we know, especially for childcare, as you said, the pandemic we could see, obviously, that there was a problem here. And so I think for us in the early childhood, we don't want to go back to pre-pandemic levels because that wasn't great anyway. But now it's just the light is on childcare, pre-K, this whole, how necessary it is for the economy. And so we want to make sure that when people come back to work and they're in these high quality programs, that the teachers are high quality and they're paid as a quality profession. So
I think that's one of the biggest keys, to entice teachers to teach. And right now we are not paying them what they should be paid. They're professionals. They should be paid a professional salary. So there's so many building blocks to all of this that we have to look at. And one of the things that you had mentioned, for our K through 12, we see the necessary food insecurities that they are going through. But when we have kids that are at home that are 3 and 4 year olds that are home, they're missing that. They're missing that breakfast, lunch. And some kids won't see that at all, unless their older siblings bring something home to them. And I think that's one of the ways that we can catch that also. There is a need, and not all of it is for, as we put it, low income families. There are some struggling families that are working families. I don't want to say middle class because, to me, middle class is, six figures. That's what middle class to me is. And there are working families that are in need. So I think that once we, look at it as, pre-K through the 12th year, we can better gauge on how we wrap around these services for our entire families. And it can happen. We could be that state that makes that happen.
Yeah. When we were looking at other states, one of the other ones that came up was South Carolina. And so they've moved towards a one application system. And so I think when you talk about family support, can you imagine going to one place, filling out one application with your eligibility and your income level, and then it's not just a referral list of, okay, well, maybe you could try these programs. They know exactly what openings are there. And so it's not a runaround. And then when they get to that new program, they're not saying, okay, well, fill out our application now. Now show us your same paperwork that you just showed 3 or 4 more times. And so I think that would be a good goal for Nevada as well. So again, it links with the data system as well, knowing what services are out there, who has waiting lists, what the eligibility is across programs, because we do know that all programs have different eligibility requirements. So it makes it really difficult for families. I know for Nevada Ready, we have some seats just in Clark alone. We have some seats in the Clark County School District, of course. We have some in charter schools. And then we work with the United Way of Southern Nevada, and we have seats in child care centers. And then there's the Head Start program, and then, of course, private child care. So when a family calls and says to me, hey, can you help me find pre-K? I'm thinking, well, depends on your income level and your family size. It depends on, do you want 5 hours a day, which is our Nevada Ready program, or do you need more because you're working and you want 8-9 hours a day? And so it's hard to even say to them, here's one place you can go and they can help you. It's call these 3 or 4 numbers and we'll see what's available for you, which makes it difficult.
Discouraging.
Yes.
That is discouraging. That's a lot to navigate for a family that is just struggling to get through the workday and provide the things that they need for their families.
And then if you have a child with special needs, you add a whole another layer onto that,
right,
which makes it difficult.
So now is perhaps the time to rethink the system and think about it pre-K all the way through 12th grade and some of the supports that families need, especially as we've seen the housing costs rise here. And families shouldn't have to choose, as you said, between keeping the lights on, feeding their child, sending them to school. And so these things, I think, are really important. We're grateful that lunches are now free for our students across the district. Grateful for that. We were so grateful to our child care providers during the pandemic. We saw them really step up when schools closed down. And they were not only serving young children, but they also took the siblings that were in school and they helped them navigate through homework and different things. And we saw them calling those centers and saying, are you going to be open next year? They knew that they could count on those childcare providers. And so when you talk about treating them as professionals, we saw that. We saw them in action step up and do the things that they did with no extra pay, and because of the love and concern they have for children and the whole family. And that was a beautiful thing. So I couldn't agree more about honoring the profession. And I wondered if you want to speak to that a little bit more about things that we could do to help support the profession, attract people to the profession, or things that you're seeing.
Well, definitely it comes down to pay and pay equity and benefits. I mean, that some providers don't offer health benefits, paid vacation leave, things that you and I probably take for granted working for a larger agency or a state agency. And so how do you attract people to a field? And thinking about even like a family childcare provider, which is great. They often, infants and toddlers do best under family childcare because it's a smaller setting. They want to, it's a little more personalized. And so we want to, again, as part of that system of from birth to third grade, really thinking about even at infant toddler care. But how would you can't even take a day off if you're a family provider, because you don't, then you're saying to that family, sorry, you can't go to work that day. So it's difficult. And I think we need to think about, where, and it's hard to recruit. So if you think about our career tech academies in the Department of Ed, those are beautiful schools. They do a great job sending high school kids onto a career. Culinary is a big one, I know. But I think we're down to 2 or 3 places with an early childhood program that would kind of have students go into teaching fields and very little into early childhood. I know on the east side of town, there's a career tech with a pre-K program, but that's so rare. But how do you say and encourage a high school student to go work for, minimum wage at a very difficult job? I worked in childcare. Mm-hmm. I know it's a physical job. It's a big responsibility, and you're getting paid very little. So I think that really has to be the start of it, is talking about that wages. And I know that sometimes we talk about the inequity of childcare versus pre-K and looking at the educational backgrounds of both fields. And so if we start to align that, then we can start to make that case to have better wages for childcare as well. And we do support a scholarship program called the Teach Early Childhood Nevada program that does offer scholarships all the way up to a bachelor's degree if you're working in a childcare program. So we do want to encourage that as well.
I think that's great. Great start. I think that, pay is one of the biggest issues that I hear teachers talk about. And I understand that. I really, truly do. I understand also that when you are a teacher, and especially with the little darlings, you have one person in a classroom with 15 kids. I think that that's not, the way. And I believe that there's a standard that we should have at least another qualified person in there. Again, I think about, my mind goes back to the Head Start program when they first, enacted that. And we had a lot of parents. That's how a lot of parents got into teaching, because they were assisting the teacher, and they went back to school so that they could get their teacher's certificate, so that they could be assisting the teachers and then become teachers themselves. So I'm saying that to say, what a way to gain professionals. You have, a mom that has, two children that they could, relatively, put in pre-K, and they're working in the school with their children. And then they go on to become a professional themselves, because generally that's how it works. And I think that that's something that we should look into also, that it's not a babysitting service. It is actually a teaching service. And we can spawn, other families, other professionals. And that's how, to me, I think that we should look at it, because some of those parents would love to be in a school where their children, not in the same classroom. I know how that would work, but that would be something that, that comes to my mind, to get more teachers teaching. And it's how we look at the profession. There are great people that come out of schools. We have doctors, lawyers. Well, how did they get there? Teachers. So we need to, reward them with incentives, like you said, not just monetary incentives, but other incentives that come along with, and I can't think of, probably when I get home, I'll think I should have said this, but I think that we have to look at the profession just like we look at doctors and lawyers. We have to actually look at our teachers that way also.
Wonderful. You speak a little bit about innovation and kind of a new mindset for Nevada. And I think we're at a historical time with a lot of female legislators. I think that helps with our understanding. A lot of them have probably, had to juggle the issues of childcare and working. And I think it's so important that we are thinking with a new mindset. And I feel very hopeful for the female legislature and the men we have working there as well. But it seems like there is kind of a new mindset there in the legislators. Are you seeing that, Assemblywoman Thomas?
Oh, yes, because some of our legislators are teachers. They are in the trenches. They are in, that field that they feel like they have no respect. They have no respect from the administration. They have no respect from, the citizens. And that's why I'm saying the mindset has got to change. We have to look at it differently because, again, we, as a community, we are sending our children to learn and become professionals. And, why are we paying our teachers at a lower scale than the professionals that our children will become? It makes no sense to me. It just, I am one of those people that even before I was in the legislature, I am a proponent of paying teachers the salary that they deserve. I am one of the ones that I respect, that learning process and teachers are a part of that process. Had it not been for my teachers and professors, and I remember my 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Bell, God rest her soul, but, she instilled in me that, that learning was my gateway. And I think it's really necessary for us to, that teacher that sees that spark in our children. And I was blessed to have a teacher for my son who saw a spark in him. And she, not to go on, but she called me up and I was like, oh, Lord, what did he do? And I'm sitting there with her and she goes, I'm just rest assured this is not, I'm complaining about him or anything like that. She goes, but I want him to see if it's okay with you if he gets into the GATE program. And I had no idea what the GATE program was. And she explained that to me. And then she says, the reason why, she says that she saw a difference in him. She said, I told a joke. And she said, I looked around and it was like crickets. And she says, I looked over and Eric was under the desk rolling. And she said, after that, she realized that, just the things that she was talking about, he caught on. And that was, and we need teachers like that. We need teachers that see something in our students and, that can push them and get them to where they need to be,
Absolutely. I experienced that firsthand moving to Nevada and being a little behind in school. And I had a kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Deer, and she taught me to read. And that opened up my world. And I was no longer behind, but I was now succeeding. And I was actually able to go back and do my student teaching with Mrs. Deer when I became an educator. So that power of a teacher is incredible.
Yeah.
But I'm going to play the devil's advocate here and say, what if, and I understand the teaching professional 100%, but sometimes the mindset is out there, we just raised their salaries, right? We just raised them to $50,000 and they have the whole summer off. We know that's not the case, but how do we fight that stigma about you have the whole summer off, you have $50,000, you should be happy?
Well, some people that make $50,000 a year that don't have the whole summer off, and our teachers, again, the whole summer off doesn't mean that they are on vacation and they're rolling in the dough. They're not. They are out there working at Home Depot. They, getting those part-time jobs. I think that, to get our teachers, into summer programs so that they can have a continuous salary going, working in the schools so that they can prepare for the next year, instead of, this concentrated 1 week before school starts. I think that, to me, I'm not the educator here, but, just to reimagine education to be a full-time job instead of, you have 2 months off and, I'm not saying that they don't need vacation, but, just reevaluate it.
I agree. I think that, it's still not a great paying job, 50,000 for the probably 10 months, really what it comes down to. But I think that, when you talk about teachers in the field, they're still not well respected. They still don't, they still are spending their own money on supplies. I can't tell you how, I think during the pandemic, the department offered the GoFundMe type program. Mm-hmm. And so why would you, how many professions do you have to have support yourself in your job? Right? You have to have a GoFundMe program so that you can offer extras, what is really best practice to children. And so I know I have a friend who teaches pre-K, and she did a few over the whole school year in terms of she wanted a better reading area. And so she did a GoFundMe project. She wanted a better center for make-believe play, and which is so important. And again, it was, why does she have to go out there and scramble for money or spend her own money in a profession that's so important? So I'm not sure the argument of 50,000 with a summer off is a good case when you still have so much need out there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I have neighbors that are educators, and they aren't able to take the summer off. They're working a second job as a real estate agent. Mm-hmm. And they're also coaching sports and things like that, exactly. Doing things out of the goodness of their heart, spending that extra time. And it's not a job that you can just walk away and leave at night. There's usually much work to be done with grading and the things that you take home. And I believe we need to support our educators just like we support other businesses. It's really difficult to convince someone not to go work at In-N-Out Burger and make a whole lot more and not take home any work with them, right? But we know that a lot of educators do it because of the satisfaction that the job brings in being able to change lives. And so I couldn't agree more that we need to continue to professionalize educators and what they do and change that mindset. So grateful for you being here.
And another thing that I think that the school district can do also is, and I might be wrong with this, I don't know whether or not teachers get a scale. You have teachers right now that have been teaching for 15 years, and like you indicated, the salary went up to 50,000, and then you have the new teachers that are coming in making the same amount. There's a slight difference there. I think that, their salary should go along with their experience also. And, I know when I worked for the county, we had merit increases. And I think that that's something that should be looked into.
Absolutely.
I think most school districts do have increases based on education levels. And so as you earn a master's degree or as you have more professional development, I'm not sure if there's a cap. But if you think about then as a system again, and you think about childcare included in that as an important piece, they do not have that. They do not have, you earn a bachelor's degree, you get more money unless they're within the scholarship program. So it is inequitable. And so if you are on your track to getting a bachelor's degree in early childhood, why would you want to work in a childcare center when you can go work for a school district? And so I know it's part of the whole system of, it's expected, I guess, that if you're in childcare, you get a degree, you move on to the school district, that's okay. And we understand that. But those childcare providers are doing such an important job. why can't they just get paid that and stay where they're at? We need those people in those professions as well. And so I think it's just the whole system is set up so that it makes it difficult for people to really want to stay. I know I had a friend who graduated, he was young, and he graduated with a degree. And he worked in special ed, and I thought, oh, you are going to be great. He was a male of color, which we need in this field. And I thought, those kids are going to love you. He was so much fun, and he lasted a school year. It was too much work. It was too much work outside of school hours because he was a special ed teacher, and it was a really difficult job, and he just didn't get the support he needed his first year teaching. And so I know some states are looking at that as well, that mentor support you need that first year, because it's a hard job. And to be thrown into a classroom with all those kids without support makes it really difficult. So I think that's something that can help with longevity of teachers too.
Well, there's a litany of areas that we should be looking at. You have your substitute teachers, you have your paraprofessionals, and it's now or never. We're at this time in Nevada's young life to make it better, and I think that I'm not saying scratch the whole system, but reevaluate the system.
You bring up an important point about some of our underserved segments, such as special education. There is a huge need there and support. And we know that in Nevada, we have some of the highest class size ratios. And so, as you said, actually funding it, supporting it where they need it, so the work is not so difficult and overwhelming, giving teachers and educators the supports they need. And the same thing can go with teachers. They're sometimes tempted to move into admin, right? Really great teachers because of the salary advance. And maybe we need to reward some of our very best teachers with those salaries that are commensurate to the work they're doing.
Those merit increases really do matter, even though I understand, that aspect of going to get your master's and moving on. That's great. They can still do that. But, a yearly merit increase will help that pocketbook also.
There are states who do wages programs for childcare, so similar to a school district doing a merit program. It's just a hard sell for even businesses because, it's something that you look at longevity and you look at education and you think, why do they get a bonus? Well, because they need that. In other fields, you get paid for the job that you're doing, the important work you're doing, and in childcare and pre-K, they just don't do that. So that is something we're looking at. It's a hard start of a program, but I think that's where we used our federal relief dollars under the welfare division, and that right now they're giving bonuses to all people working in the field, but that will stop soon. So.
You brought up a couple of points I want to touch on again, and that is innovation. We talked about supporting the whole family. I've seen, as I studied other schools across the country, I've seen some systems where, like you said, the children are enrolled in the school. The parents actually can attend the school and get the training that they need. They support the whole family. I've seen other systems in Colorado where I went to study the school, particularly the K through 12. But when I went to their pre-K program, it was the little gem that we did not expect. And it was place-based learning. And there was incredible work going on there. And it was wonderful to see those children. And they talked about that being kind of the start of the future of their children in that program. Have you seen other examples of schools here doing innovative things or really wonderful things with students that you want to shout out, or businesses that have partnered in any way?
Not to the degree that we should. I know that there are a lot of partners out there that want to participate in schools. Some that, I've called up and, I would say Nevada Energy, Southwest Gas, they want to be active in our schools. But I have to also give a shout out to our labor unions who are looking at going back to, as they say, the old days where you had shop in school and, those things. So I think that we do see it, but not to the degree that I would love to see it, especially with our pre-K. Most of it is on the high school level.
Thank you.
I think I'm very proud of our Nevada Ready pre-K classrooms. I think they do a great job. We monitor for quality. I think we do know that there are other types of pre-K within the school district that we don't oversee, so I can't really speak to those. But I know for Nevada Ready, we support the family. We have a family engagement survey that really speaks to, they talk about how important the program was, how, especially if they're English as second language learners, that they had the support that their child could learn a second language, make friends. And, I think we talk about that transition from pre-K to K. Our Nevada Ready sites do a great job. But when we're only serving less than 3,000 children, then you're talking about a very small impact. And so I think that's the biggest problem, that as we expand, we still have to maintain that quality piece. The one business model that I can think of is, and I hate to just name one because I'm sure there are others, but is Patagonia up in Reno. I know that they support their employees. They have the on-site childcare, and it's supposed to be a very good center. And so I think that's a great model as we want to draw in more companies to Nevada. I think that would be a good model to look at.
Wonderful. Thank you for highlighting that one. And because it brings to mind, what can our local leaders in our municipalities do to help advocate for that and help make those partnerships happen, as well as our legislators? What can we do as a community to see more of that innovation that we're looking for, like Patagonia is doing?
Well, I think that a lot of it is just asking our community, telling them that there's a need. And just to backtrack a little bit, I know that the YMCA is also a program that has, especially during the pandemic, reached out. And in my, North Las Vegas, the same thing. They had programs that reached out to the community that are actually still part of the makeup of schools right now, just because it worked during the pandemic. And I think that that's something that, we should look at, to what worked and to expand on that, not to just shelve it. And I think that a lot of people were looking just to shelve things. And I think that it's important for us not to, and to embrace those that were helping.
I think City of Las Vegas and City of Henderson are really great examples of reaching out from that level of support so City of Las Vegas has the Strong Start Go buses, which if you haven't seen those are really fabulous. I mean, obviously we would love to see all children in universal pre-K, longer day, 5 hours, but when you have a bus coming to your neighborhood because you don't have transportation and you're not quite sure what pre-K is all about, that's a great first step. And so, those buses are huge, but they also then have brick and mortar buildings, Strong Start programs. And so they've made huge efforts, and now they have the charter school. So they're really looking at it from a whole pre-K to 12 system eventually, I think. But they've done a great job. Henderson's done a lot of work in early childhood. I know the tax was passed recently, last session, that was a small percentage of tax could be used for, and it was early childhood was one option, and there was others, which is great. But I think only Clark County took advantage of that piece of legislation. So that could be another model, and see, what you could do with those funds. So
thank you for giving some shout outs to those. I know that we've talked about whose responsibility is it for accountability for these outcomes. Ultimately, whose responsibility is it? Is it the city? Is it the community? Is it the legislators? What would be your answer to that? Who is making sure that our children are fully ready upon graduation? Where does that accountability for the dollars, for the quality, for our children lie?
Oh,
go ahead.
Okay. I think actually all of us. I think that it starts with, our families, the parents, the citizens are saying, and we're hearing it. We're hearing it in meetings educational meetings that we have, that the legislature has enacted. We hear it in our school board that parents are engaged. We have a concern about our kids' education. So I think that's that foundation for parents to be engaged and to want to be able to say to the educators, the administration, we want a better educational system for our children. And then to make sure that the legislators know that this is what we want local, and then our federal delegation, we have to make sure that everyone in that orbit knows that education is the foundation to make this state great. We cannot sit back and, rely on how things were 50, 60 years ago. It was a small state. When I moved here, I believe the Valley, I remember reading 325,000 people. Now we have about 3.2 million. And, when you consider, the land size of the Valley, just the Valley alone, we have to do better. And with parents that are moving here and not accepting being 48th in the country, I think that's a start. And let's face it, politicians will listen to the constituents because they want to be, doing the job that they are doing right now. And I think that it is important for us to all come together for that one main goal, is to educate our kids. And that's including our senior citizens, because I know our seniors are learning now that, because there was a time that seniors said, well, my kids are grown, I don't have to worry about education. And they're realizing, no, I need them educated so that when I go to a doctor or go to, a lawyer, or even go to my local CVS store, that they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's worth repeating. Education is the foundation to make our state great. And if you have an individual who wants to get involved in advocacy, what should they do to help further this work?
Be out there, contact your legislators. And, our governor right now, in their office, they have so many programs that are not being filled, advisory programs, sitting on commissions, sitting on, committees. It is necessary. The county also, our local government, city, county, the governor's office, there are so many programs that we can be engaged in that we're not. And this is where that foundation that, I believe that, getting citizens involved, this is what will make the state great. It's more than being on the PTA, but we should be on the PTA. We should be concerned about what's happening in our individual schools, because those principals need to know that they have the backing of the parents. So again, I think that, whatever we can do to be engaged as citizens of this state, we should do it.
Agree.
And there is an early childhood council. So there's the Nevada Early Childhood Advisory Council. That is a great place to hear what's happening, again, across domains of health and safety and families and education. And so it's a good place to start and get involved. And I think there is also an organization, the Nevada Association for the Education of Young Children. So if you're already working in the workforce and you're interested in how to get more involved, they do have an advocacy piece of their agency that works to better improve the working conditions. So there are ways to get involved. I do think that it takes everyone from families all the way up, and that collaboration piece is so important, because I know from a program side, we're always looking at, we cannot work in our little bubble. We cannot, otherwise we're going to be duplicating services, or worse, we're not going to know there's a need out in the community. And so we have to understand what everyone else is doing and work together, and then collect the data points to show what is working. And we have to make those tough decisions sometimes of, do we continue to fund this program? Did it make an impact? Or can we put the money somewhere else to make a bigger impact? And so we're always looking at, with our partners, what kind of programs are being offered to the families? Where do we need to expand? But we don't, primarily the funding pieces that come in are from the federal child care and development funds. They have a requirement for our states to set aside money to improve quality. So that's where a lot of our funding comes from for some of these support programs. But if we do have, it's a limited pot of money as well. So we do have to make those decisions and work together. But the Nevada Early Childhood Advisory Council has a great strategic plan, puts us on a path across different program types. So, I think it is a responsibility of all that we take for, young children.
Wonderful. And those are great organizations that you pointed out. We get the Children's Advocacy Alliance as well, work with a group of parent ambassadors every year when we're looking for our next cohort of individuals who want to be involved in training, in connections with legislators, and then continue serving, like you said, on some of those committees and councils in the community, wherever their area of passion and interest is, we keep them involved, and really appreciate that, because we know how important the family voice is, and connecting with our community and not working in those silos that you talked about. One last thing I want to touch on is barriers. Sometimes we have some barriers. You mentioned transportation. Transportation can be a barrier for families. It can be a barrier to some of the summer learning that was going on. We've also heard some concerns about barriers when a person wants to do a child care center, but they might not own their own home. They might be renting. What can we do to eliminate some of those barriers, or what other barriers have you seen that maybe we need to work on to help continue to advance this work? You talked about the data system, which is so important. What else?
Well, I know the Children's Cabinet just opened the child care service centers, both in Reno and Las Vegas. And I think that's a great place to think about barriers and start to hear what those barriers are. Obviously, they're not going to be able to solve everything, but I think it's a great place to bring people together for resources, whether it's a family or a child care provider or a pre-K teacher. Anyone working in the field can come to those centers and start to think about. And so you mentioned a family home provider who maybe is in an apartment, but we need places that loving people who can take care of children. But if they're in an apartment, there might be a barrier to get a license. There might be fees that are involved. And so how can we help with fees? Sometimes licensure fees, whether for a teacher, for fingerprinting, all those things that cost is a definite barrier. And so could we help support that cost, either waive it or, find a funding mechanism to support teachers? Because it's hard to pay for your first job.
Right, absolutely.
So I think for families, it is also getting the information out there. How do they find a program? How do they know what's available? And again, they could stop at the service centers. They can look at websites, but it's a tough system to navigate as a family.
Absolutely, we're grateful for those service centers.
I totally agree. Again, we have to, as you put it earlier, innovate and think differently, and look at other states. How have they, tackled this barrier or these barriers? And it's okay to collaborate. It's okay to get business. We have casinos in our state that have we knocked on their door? Have we, got them to engage? And, the mining industry. It's so many, facets of the economy, businesses that we need to engage and have. When we said everyone, let's not exclude them, because they have employees that need, these, there's a big need for them to be engaged in educating our children. And I think that that's one thing that we so often forget about, is that we have to have them as partners also.
I can't thank you both enough for being here and having this important conversation, Assemblywoman Thomas and Patti. We are so excited for the future, what Nevada holds, and moving us forward in better ways. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.